After making a small deal at the deadline, the Lakers look ready to compete for Giannis in the summertime. We'll tell you why that path is filled with landmines next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends, even on holidays, Andy, and sometimes for not just one, but two bonus episodes over the course of a day. No matter whether you're a Spotify guy, maybe you get the podcast through Apple iTunes, maybe you're one of the 37,000 plus subscribers to Locked On Lakers on YouTube, which is a happening and hopping spot, particularly on days like today. No matter how you do it, you're part of making Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in this or any other known universe. Brian Kamenetsky with Andy Kamenetsky. We are guys who have been covering this team for a very long time, almost 2 decades, for the ESPN, for the LA Times, for the Athletic. And Andy, this is one of those trade deadlines where the headline for the Lakers might not actually be the player they acquired. We did a show earlier in the day on the trade for Luke Kennard, which we both like. Luke Kennard to the Lakers for a second-round pick and Gabe Vincent. He will help with their shooting. He saves them actually a little bit of money, which could be put towards the buyout market. That could come in handy. All in all, it was a nice little move for Rob Pelinka.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to add beyond what we talked about with Luke Kennard and obviously the shooting that he brings, which is elite, it is important to remember that he's not just an elite spot-up shooter. He is a movement shooter. Like, he is somebody that you can run off screens, like you can actually run sets for to get him open. And it's different than somebody like Rui, he's an elite three-point shooter, but he is much more of a stationary three-point shooter camped out, as opposed to someone like Kennard, who, to be clear, he is not Klay Thompson, but he operates much more like Klay Thompson in terms of the way he's used, or the way JJ Redick was used when he played, than just a spot-up shooter. That, I just want to make sure that point is emphasized, because it's not just Kennard's ability to shoot, which again, he is shooting almost 50% from three this season. He's 44% on his career. The lowest he's ever shot in a season is 39%. And he's only shot that low twice in 9 seasons. But just to emphasize the versatility of his shooting beyond just the skill set. That's all.
So the headline, and I referred to it in the open, the big picture headline for the Lakers really has nothing to do with Luke Kennard and how much he'll help the team this year. He'll help. He doesn't make the Lakers contenders. There was no, as we discussed in that show, there was no move out there for what the Lakers had that was going to make them contend, like true contenders. And there'll be time to figure out who they might be able to add. The buyout market will start going through some of those names once they're all available. But Giannis Antetokounmpo was not moved by the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks clearly are going to make every effort, turn over every stone, do whatever they possibly can until every opportunity is exhausted before they move Giannis, or they are going to need Giannis to definitively make a stink out of wanting to be traded. Neither of those things seems to have happened yet, at least not with enough force.
They might need Adam Silver just to step in and say, I am decreeing that you will move Giannis Antetokounmpo, because neither one of you sides will bleep or get off the pot. I'm declaring you bleep. I am declaring that you just bleeped.
Right. Someone's getting off the pot.
You are both in the process of bleeping. Go handle your business.
So, with that, the minute the trade deadline passed and Giannis was exactly where he was, and the Lakers obviously preserving all of their cap flexibility. I actually just tweeted out Thursday afternoon a projection from Yossi Goslin, the cap expert, looking at some of the numbers that might be available for the Lakers, and it is somewhere in that neighborhood of about 45 to 50 million, depending on exactly who they get rid of, where their first round pick lands, and all that kind of stuff.
Do DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart pick up their options?
Right.
Like
and all the projections assume that, that those at the very least are things that are on the books for the Lakers. As people do the cap math now. So the Lakers don't use any of their picks except that second rounder, which, if we're being honest, would be incidental to a Giannis chase. In most cases, we could get rabbit holed as to why it would be relevant, but not worth it.
If you need a second round pick that badly, you can purchase one.
You can find it. You can figure out how to move a guy.
Right.
It can get done. So they'll have the access to the 3 picks around draft day. They'll have all the cap space. They'll have, potentially a couple other things they might be able to use, but they are believed to be focused now on Giannis as at least a major, I even say plan A before as we head into the summer. That's what it looks like on the outside. Obviously, the Lakers haven't had time to comment on that yet and probably won't, but
I don't think they can.
They can't, but
I mean,
yeah, but you understand what I mean. They're not going to through channels. I think, they're not made, it'll be out there. The Lakers are interested. Everybody's going to be interested in Giannis. That is not a secret. I'm going to guess where you come down on the Giannis's plan A plan. I'm not going to say it out loud, but I'm going to ask you to respond. And
why don't you write it down? Why don't you write it down, and that way everyone will know that you were being honest.
Okay, I will write while you get going. I just got to find a pen. You start.
Well, I can't start. If I start, Brian, that's cheating. But anyway, we'll use the honor system. I'm not wild about the Giannis as plan A thing if it's a hard and fast, we will wait it out plan along the lines of the way the Lakers were waiting out Kawhi Leonard in the summer of 2019, which I realize it ultimately worked out for the Lakers. They won a championship, but they also won a championship with LeBron James in hand, Anthony Davis in hand, and a supporting cast, some of whom were already in place, and a very specifically unusual situation where Danny Green was in their hip pocket because he was specifically waiting out Kawhi Leonard's decision as well, because they had been teammates both in San Antonio and in Toronto, where they just won a championship. If Kawhi was going to return to Toronto, Danny Green was going to return to Toronto. If Kawhi was going anywhere but Toronto, Danny Green would have been somewhere else. Kudos to Rob for having the foresight and the proactivity to make that happen. But again, it's super specific and things that you cannot count on. If the plan is to wait out Giannis at the expense of other viable and even good options that just simply are not splashiest, biggest name possible, I don't like it. On top of the idea that I am not wild at the prospect of being the team that pays Giannis $60 to $70 million a season in his mid to late 30s, considering he's been getting hurt increasingly more often. I realize he is still a great player when he's healthy. He's still an elite player when he's healthy. I am concerned when he's healthy is going to start to become a less frequent thing. And there are elements of Giannis's game that I have concerns about in the way they will age. Again, It doesn't take away from the fact that he's obviously a great player. Do I think he and Luka can work together? Yeah, I think they can figure that out. I do not want to see the Lakers cut off a lot of optionality when you've gone through all this, process to create this much cap space, or you've just centered yourself so much on this much cap space and flexibility to then sit on it waiting for one guy and then potentially go to plan C or D if A isn't there. If that's the plan, I don't like it.
That's I wrote down. You can't read it because it's backwards, but it says He hates it. So that was my guess as to what you've read. Let's take a break. And after, though, this is a tricky thing here, because there are a lot of competing forces here that could influence why you would choose a particular path, and some of the challenges that the Lakers are facing regardless of how they approach the Giannis question. So we'll explain that next.
The buttons aren't working, but Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Indeed. Hiring it's not about simply finding someone who'll take a job. A lot of people are going to take a job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs, that's your move. Because instead of hoping the right person just stumbles across your post like the Lakers looking for Giannis, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing.
Do you think he needs to fill out like a job application? Like for the
No,
Lakers, does that have to go through HR?
Well, HR is also Rob Pelinka, so they've got two birds covered with one stone. Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. And if I was hiring, I wouldn't want just someone who can help. I'd want someone with real job experience who can jump right in. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates, who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check the boxes. With Indeed sponsored jobs, listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring. You hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed.
Locked On Lakers is also brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life, and this year TurboTax is making it easier than ever. Just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Let's say you're, transferring your home income from Wisconsin to California. You're going to need somebody to do that for you. So instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. So just file it by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today.
Locked On Lakers is finally brought to you by FanDuel. We know the matchups. It has been settled. Super Bowl, Patriots, Seahawks, Super Bowl 60. FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or making one last same game parlay, building that winner. This is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger than the last one. It is the perfect way to cap off the season and to make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. And if you're a new customer, bet just $5, $5, you get 200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl season, it's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Okay, so here's the thing. On the one hand, look, I share your concern over an aging Giannis. It is a version, although a significantly better version, of the dilemma of paying Anthony Davis that the Lakers were facing before the Luka trade, where you're just a guy who's older, who's more injury prone, less likely to give you everything that you want, at least on a daily basis because of availability, and all of that stuff. Flip side is, like you say, it's still Giannis, still one of the 3 or 4 best players in the NBA. It's hard to turn that down. So, okay, I get it. It's a tricky situation, though, because the Lakers probably won't still be able to make the best deal in terms of draft capital. I think other teams, if they really want to make a run at Giannis, have both the ability to offer more of their own stuff and then acquire more things if they want. Even if you think, the Lakers with their 3 first rounders they can offer plus a couple swaps or whatever, even if you think that's a good deal. The Lakers have the capacity to trade into their cap space if they decide to go a different way. They can sign guys, they can trade for guys, they can do all that stuff. I agree with you. They need to figure out how to fill out this roster. They have all this cap space to work with. The flip side of that is it's a bad year for free agents. So more likely than not, you run the risk this offseason of overpaying for guys that you wouldn't really want to give that kind of money for just because they're the only ones available. We noted you can use it for trades, though. The problem with that is the Lakers don't have a lot of stuff to trade to get really good players to bring into that cap space. So they don't have a super clean path forward. Can they, if they can get Giannis, if they really think Giannis wants to come to LA and they have a little bit of runway to figure out how to do it and all that, can they get Giannis and still figure out how to grab a couple supplementary pieces that will help fill out the roster in a way that it's not just a different version of this year's super top heavy problem? If you can do that, great. I would think I'd be on board with the Giannis plan. But that's a tough needle to thread.
It is a tough needle to thread. And look, for what it's worth, I think they do have a fair amount of optionality in terms of there are a significant amount of paths that they could take. And I think there is a fair amount you can do as a team with Luka Dončić at its center, presumably Austin Reeves in tow, that much potential cap space and 3 firsts. I think there's a lot that can be done. What can't be done, and I think fans need to wrap their heads around this, and maybe even the front office needs to wrap their head around this. You can't do everything. And the idea that you're going to be able to build a super team right off the bat from either those different avenues that we described, or that just by landing Giannis, you automatically become a super team and that everything is solved. Like, those are the traps that the front office, at the very least, because they're the ones actually making these decisions, they need to avoid that sort of stuff. Like, as an example, as a pure example, if they used 2, maybe even 3 of the picks to bring in somebody like Trey Murphy, and then you had the extra, you're absorbing essentially Trey Murphy into your cap space, and then you have another 25-ish, give or take, to play with after I believe Troy Murphy's making somewhere in the 20s, I think, right now. I could be wrong. I'd have to look it up, but I think it's roughly in that area. Mm-hmm. You at that point have at least some significant space to try to build around that. Is it as
one more player? You can get one more pretty good player with that.
Right. Is it as splashy as getting Giannis? Is it as Lakery as getting Giannis? No, but if you're asking me, I think it's actually a better plan than getting Giannis, because also, while Trey Murphy is obviously not as good as Giannis, he's a damn good player, and he's somebody on a timeline that can grow with Luka and can grow with Austin. Another thing I don't love, to be honest, I mentioned before about the idea of not wanting to give Giannis that sort of contract, or at least I'm a bit skittish about it, giving him that sort of contract into his mid to late 30s, is he is in some respects on a different timeline than Luka and Austin. Like, he is 4 or 5 years older than those guys, and you start having different considerations with a player like him.
Yes, I see. I don't mean to cut you off, but like, yes and no. I don't think the Lakers are on a patience timeline. Let's slowly and methodically build around Luka over 3 or 4 seasons.
That's not what I'm talking about.
But like, so
that's not what I'm talking about.
I know, but like, if you can find a bunch of younger players to trade for, great. Troy Murphy's not going to be you're not getting Troy Murphy. Trey Murphy. You could get Troy Murphy. You can't get
Troy Murphy. You don't even need any.
You trade 2 first-rounders for Troy Murphy. That is terrible work by
that's team. A fireable offense. Yeah. Get on him. I don't care how much Jeannie loves Rob.
But
Mark Walter, get on
this summer, you're not getting Trey Murphy for 2 first-rounders if you're the Lakers. That's just not going to happen because you're talking about picks that are going to be almost surely in the high
3. Fine, then 3.
But okay. So but my point being here is like, if you can find young players to sign and fill that space, if you can get Walker Kessler, great. I don't think I think Utah is going to match just about any offer for him. I think Denver is likely to match just about any offer for Peyton Watson, for example, especially an offer that comes from a Western Conference rival like the Lakers. So, if you can get younger and all that stuff, great. I think I might prefer that too. 4 or 5 good young players, 3 or 4 good young players, whatever it might be, to all in their mid-20s to put with your other guys who are in their mid-20s. But that scenario feels in a lot of ways sort of just as unlikely as you sort of waited out for Giannis and try to hit your home runs kind of perfect thing. Like, the answer is almost surely going to be a variety of imperfect options that all have highlights. If you can get Giannis and still figure out a way to viably fill a few important roles around your roster, then yeah, there's a risk there, but you're also making it so there's a very good chance that for the next couple of seasons, you have an excellent team.
That's true.
So
you're asking me what I would prefer.
My preference, I agree with you.
Yeah. I'm not talking, just so it's clear, because I'm seeing people in the chat misinterpret it, and I think you may have misinterpreted what I meant. I'm not talking about building slower or more methodically or anything like that. I'm talking about building with what I think gives you a longer runway, and you get a longer runway automatically, assuming you have good players when they're younger. That's all I'm talking about.
I agree with that. And somebody mentioned, and it was too far back in the chat for me to say, like, Rob Pelinka, and you alluded to this, Andy, and we can quit here and get ready for the game, which starts in an hour and 20 minutes from when we're recording this. The challenge for Rob Pelinka is going to be navigating the scenarios that aren't obvious. It may become abundantly obvious that Giannis is coming here, and you just got to figure out how to engineer it, and that's great. And it's like the Anthony Davis thing or the Luka thing, where all you have to do is not talk about it, and you get to get Luka Dončić. And all that's great. More likely, it's like there's a risk reward here. There's an opportunity cost for staying in the Giannis derby. What happens if Giannis? What if the Bucks don't, whatever, and now you got to wait for the next deadline or something like that, like where you have to, as you said earlier in the show, bleep or get off the pot. Rob has always struggled with the imperfect, more challenging, less obvious choice. And the summer is shaping up to be a series of those.
This is the summer where Rob Pelinka has no more excuses. He has a superstar in his prime who is very committed to this organization. He has, in all likelihood, Austin Reeves, who, even if you don't think he is good enough to be the second best player on a championship team, he's definitely good enough to be the third best. He and Luka, if nothing else, offensively can play well off each other. He surely will have a good amount of cap space, maybe the most of any real team in the offseason. He has 3 first-round picks, which is not a boatload, but it's not nothing either. This is the most optionality and most ability he is going to have to build from the ground up since he's taken this job, and certainly for several years and for a while, and we talked about this leading up to where we are now, and certainly before the Luka trade, it was very clear that for the last couple seasons of LeBron and AD, he had lost confidence in that and did not want to invest any further. But they, as an organization, also didn't. They did not either have the guts to or the confidence to whatever pivot out of it. And you can agree, disagree with their logic, whatever. It's now over. At this point now, Rob has something that he should commit to. There is no more logical explanation to kick anything down the road. Whereas before, I think some of the grand vision they were talking about was really just him disguising, I don't believe in this group, but I can't say it. There's no more excuses at this point. There's nothing.
So we will see how this resolves. I don't expect we'll need to talk about this or Giannis anymore until we get a conclusion to the story. So I hope everybody enjoyed our analysis. I doubt it'll come up again. But in the meantime, Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 37,000 subscribers to the channel. Plenty more to cover about the, in terms of how the Lakers might try to tweak the roster before the end of the year. We'll get into that probably more next week as the buyout market becomes a little bit more clear. And we'll see everybody after the game.